At some point, we've signed an e-signature, and most of you are likely using e-signatures to acquire signatures from your clients with your contracts. But are these things enforceable? And if they are enforceable, how does that even work if your client contests or argues that they did not sign something? We're going to find out in today's video. Hey out there, welcome back to Wedding Industry Law. My name is Rob. I am an attorney representing wedding and event industry professionals, and I make videos just like this one for wedding professionals trying to keep it legal. And we're talking today about e-signatures. So there are various companies that offer the service of e-signatures. So you got DocuSign, I believe Adobe has that now, signnow.com, HelloSign. So it's ubiquitous. It is everywhere. E-signatures are being used by most companies everywhere. And in fact, you're probably using them yourself. But the issue comes up, are these in fact enforceable when it all comes down, when we're at brass tacks and you've got somebody possibly challenging that signature? Is it enforceable because it's not in blue ink on a piece of paper? And typically, the answer is yes, that is an enforceable signature. To the extent that signatures are enforceable, electronic ones are typically okay to use. So there are typically going to be in every jurisdiction some type of state law regarding e-signatures, but there is definitely federal legislation governing the validity of e-signatures, and that is the Electronic Signatures in Global National Commerce Act, and that's a little acronym for, and it stands for e-sign. So we always have to have a pithy acronym for these legislations. But at any rate, that legislation and most state legislation, including those probably in your jurisdiction, it basically says that written signatures have the same effect, the same enforcement power as a written signature. But essentially, how does that work in effect? Like when somebody sits down to sign something, they're physically present, the ink is real, the person is there, we can put eyeballs on them, and we know that, okay, this is Miss Johnson, and this is Miss Johnson using her hand to sign the signature. And then even if we aren't present for that, we can have Miss Johnson go, hey, Miss Johnson, is that your signature? Or she can say, that's not my signature, and we can compare Miss Johnson's old signatures to this current signature. And that's, how does that work in the electronic binary world of numbers and the matrix and all that kind of stuff? It's actually quite simple. Typically, when a document is sent to somebody for e-signature, there is a verification process that includes capturing certain amount of unique information regarding the person that's signing, whether it's a social security number, whether it's some type of PIN code or password that the signer creates then, or maybe even an email address, something. There are steps to gathering information that typically only that person is going to have. So all those PIN codes, the passwords, IP address, even location, all that kind of stuff gets basically time-stamped into a digital audit trail, so to speak. And that audit trail basically is the verification of what actually occurred when it occurred. So again, what happens if you have a client that goes, I didn't click that button, I didn't, kind of use the mouse and make that little scribble. That's not my scribble. That's not my click. What happens if you get into a situation like that? What's the process by which we can adjudicate whether or not that person actually in fact did that? And it is the same process as if it was a written signature. We are going to generate evidence that the person in fact did it. And that evidence is the audit trail that we're talking about. In case law across the country where people have been doing this, like, hey, that ain't me. My name is Paul and that's between y'all. The court will go, okay, well, show us that audit trail, and it'll show email addresses, PIN codes, and you can go, hey, Miss Johnson, is this your IP address? You're saying that you didn't click this button, but somebody at your house, at your computer, clicked it. And so you can see that, the walls will close in around somebody depending on the verification process used by the company that the e-sign company. So that audit trail and that audit trail can be used as evidence to show that the person actually did e-sign the contract. And then you can obviously, if there's an issue with that, you can gather more evidence in terms of testimony and things like that. But this is not something that I think will really come into play for you. There's a 1 in a million chance this is going to happen. And the reason why is because typically in situations where somebody's saying, I didn't click on that, that's not me. That's a hard argument to make if you've done 10 walkthroughs with that person, or they've talked to you about the playlist for the wedding, or they've, communicated with you for a long time, and maybe you've exchanged money. You know what I mean? They can't all of a sudden at the end of the day go, well, this isn't valid because I didn't sign it, or I don't know who you are. Now, of course, if this happens the day after the thing is signed, if they're saying I didn't sign that, then you might have there might be more of an issue. But again, you have the evidence, the audit trail, all that kind of stuff. But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's typically why in your day-to-day world of being a wedding professional, this is not something that's super high on your priority to worry about. The only thing I can say is that you want to make sure that best practices are to use an actual legitimate e-sign service. And what I mean by that is, don't simply send like a Microsoft Word document to somebody and have them type their name in, or a PDF and have them type their name in on something like that, because you're not necessarily going to be getting the audit trail, that verification process that you would use to verify that person actually signed it. So like doing those kind of like, DIY e-signatures might defeat the purpose of the whole thing. It might not be worth it because you won't be able to really, the authenticity of it, you won't be able to certify it essentially. So again, e-signatures, great. No problem typically, depending on if, the circumstances that you have enforcing them. And then best practices are going to be, don't, skimp on the company. I don't have any recommendations on which company. I'm just saying that if you use a legitimate company, they're going to have verification processes that are going to work for you, as opposed to you just doing it yourself by sending a Microsoft Word document and having them type stuff into it. I would never recommend that in any, not just e-signatures, but in general. Hope you enjoy the content of this video. Like I said, new videos every week for wedding professionals just trying to keep it legal. My name is Rob. I'm a wedding industry attorney. And if you have any suggestions for content, if you have something you want me to talk about, please be sure to leave a comment down below, like and subscribe. And with that, folks, we'll see you next week.